Today we're recapping the kids' action comedy movie, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Spoilers ahead. We begin with two families that are in comparable situations but in very different ways. A teen girl's on the phone, and a geeky young boy is constructing a little gadget. By the way, this is an odd kitchen. All of the equipment appear to be custom built. Quite badly, we should add. We hear through the girl's discussion that the kids' parents had a disagreement the night before and that their mother slept at their grandmother's house. Ouch. Suddenly, a zap is heard. We cut to a strange switchboard with several spots in the home listed on it. After zooming out, the camera sees none other than Wayne Szalinski, who's working in a lab like a crazy scientist. When the breakfast alarm goes off, dear old dad sends a message downstairs through another homemade device that he'll be late. The camera pans across to a man in a bed next door. The sound of Mr. Szalinski hard at work awakens him from his nap. Big Russ Thompson is his name. He goes outside to give his neighbor a piece of his mind, since he and his family are going on a trip today. However, as he walks furiously, he stumbles over a tripwire and comes to a halt. Ron, his son, set it up, claiming to be defending the backyard. Mr. Thompson ignores the warning and walks right into the wire, triggering a mousetrap, which in turn triggers a crossbow. Fortunately, the weapon in question is a kid's suction cup bolt. Nick, the son, runs over to his father's laboratory and shows him a miniature duplicate of the strange gun thing his father's building. Mr. Szalinski, on the other hand, ignores him. Instead, he concentrates on his own machine, which he has just turned on. On a target screen, we observe an apple that's being blasted to fragments. It wasn't meant to work like that. The apple was meant to become smaller. Mrs. Thompson, next door, is assisting Big Russ in washing his face. They watch their kid Russell, aka Little Russ, emerge from his room once they're done. Mr. Thompson asks if he's looking forward to the big fishing trip, but Russell says no before going into the restroom. Diane takes her husband aside and informs him that Lil Russ has been dismissed from the football squad. Breakfast is being eaten by the Szalinski family at their home. Well, sort of. Too bad because it's too burnt for anyone other than the dog to eat. Mr. Szalinski hurries out since he has an important meeting. Cinema recap here. We've got a little challenge that'll take 5 seconds, and it will change your life forever. You ready? All you gotta do is like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and you'll receive 10 free years of good luck. It's as simple as that. However, his wife calls, and he hurries back inside as he packs stuff into his car. Wayne, aka Mr. Szalinski, is attending a conference, and Diane Szalinski wishes him luck. She'll be showing a house later today. She's a real estate agent. But after that, she'll be back home. That means the children will be responsible for cleaning up the mess. Nick is persuading his pal Tommy to mow the lawn for him, Tom Sawyer style, in the front yard. But how does he do it? By flaunting his swanky new lawnmower with remote control. Tommy accepts, but promises to do it later. Big Russ is getting provisions for the fishing excursion in the meantime. Ron wants him to play baseball with him, but both his father and Lil Russ refuse. Ron walks up to the fence and watches Nicky tidying up the yard while yelling obscenities. Nick is called a worm by Ron. Meanwhile, Amy is cleaning the kitchen while listening to music. Russ gets all googly-eyed as he watches her through the window. Big Russ comes in and shows Little Russ some weights and tells him about his own high school football accomplishments, though he proves himself utterly incapable of lifting the weight. Mr. Thompson then steps outside to light a cigarette. His wife, much to his displeasure, intervenes him before he can light up. Ron swings at a baseball while Little Russ pumps iron. When he connects, the ball flies through the Szalinski's upper window, smashing through Mr. Szalinski's cherished shrink gun. When Little Russ notices this, he takes Ron and brings him to the next door to confront them. The machine begins to operate as they do so, firing blasts across the room. Everything that comes into contact with it vanishes. As soon as Amy answers the door, Russ becomes speechless. He regains his calm long enough to convince Ron to acknowledge his error and agree to pay for the window with his allowance money. He and Nick head upstairs in search of the ball. Russ, now alone with his crush, makes the blunder of implying that he had seen her dance. Bro, you made a bad call. When the two youngsters walk into the lab, they're immediately blasted by the laser. We're gonna guess they've kicked the bucket, or maybe not. Wayne is demonstrating his shrink ray to a group of entrepreneurs and discussing its potential commercial uses. It's a complete flop. Amy and Russ return home and head upstairs to see how their younger brothers are doing. It takes them approximately 2 seconds to get blasted as well. Fortunately, no one's dead. Instead, they were shrunk. That is, however, very encouraging news for Wayne, as it indicates that the device is operational. He's just lost his kids in the process. Amy and Russ are stunned as they glance around the room. Nick and Ron dash over to greet their newly downsized brothers and sisters. Wayne appears out of nowhere and calls out for the kids. There's no answer. He ascends the stairs and enters the laboratory. The children scream for our local crazy scientist's attention, but their voices are too faint for him to hear. Cute and terrifying. He goes to sit on the sofa. To the mini kids, his landing feels like an earthquake. When Wayne discovers the damaged window, he begins to panic. In his rage, he begins breaking the shrink ray into bits, which, given the circumstances, appears to be a dumb move. He cleans up the mess with a broom. The youngsters struggle hard to get away from its savage bristles, but are unable to, ending up in the dustpan and eventually the garbage. What a day. Wayne tosses the bag to the side of the road. Fortunately, the children manage to rip a hole in the wall of their plastic prison. When you're so small, grass really does seem like a jungle. It's a tough situation. Everyone slowly follows Ron out, crawling on a blade of grass. Russ and Ron are arguing over who's in charge when they're stopped by the biggest butterfly they've ever seen. They take refuge behind a mushroom. Nick performs some fast arithmetic and figures they're around 3.2 miles away from the house, based on their size. Diane Zielinski appears at the same time. She informs her husband that she's finally sold the property. Wayne admits that he failed miserably on his end and that he'll be returning to his previous work. Mom's curious about the children's whereabouts, but Wayne is unsure where they are because he's been too busy playing with his broken machine. Right here, guys. A-plus parents. It's 1 p.m., and the kids are running about the yard. They arrive at a murky river, which is littered with dead bugs and other filth. Nick suddenly gets an idea. Because Quark, their dog, has excellent hearing, as all dogs do, they could alert him by whistling and hitch a ride until they get home. They start whistling after climbing a blade of grass. Inside, Mama and Papa are informing neighbors and acquaintances that the kids are missing. No one else has seen them. They open the door and allow Quark to go outdoors to relieve himself. When Quark appears, the youngsters are still climbing. He goes over, but the Thompsons' cat chases him away. What a knucklehead. The ruckus knocks the youngsters off their feet and lands Nick in the center of a blooming daisy. He has a pollen allergy though, so it's bad news. Meanwhile, the two mothers meet in the yard and inquire about their respective children's whereabouts. Before hearing a far worse sound, a swarm of bees, the youngsters hear their parents yelling their names. Nick is snatched, and Russ attempts to save him by jumping on the back of the bee. As they fly around the yard, the two kids clutch each other tightly. Both of their fathers, by the way, try to knock them out of the sky. Mr. Zielinski also uses a baseball bat. Ever tried killing a bee with a baseball bat? The children are ultimately rescued from the bee. Diane's leaving to hunt for the kids, so she instructs Wayne to give her customers, the Borsteins, the house purchase papers when they come by, because nothing could possibly go wrong with Wayne in charge. Wayne stares up at his shattered window, and as he stands there holding the baseball bat with which he nearly murdered his kid, Wayne goes upstairs and looks around the room until he finds the shrunken couch. Everything falls into place, and he searches hard for the kids. He then notices the broom. Uh-oh. He notices the hole in the garbage bag on the curb. Then, on his way back to the house, he realizes that each step he makes, he may squash the kids. So he crawls along the fence like a lunatic. Russ looks down at Nick as he wakes up coated in bee pollen. They don't know where they are, but based on the state of the grass, they're still in the Zielinski's yard. Cut to Ron and Amy yelling at each other. Things are getting difficult down in the grass jungle. Wayne puts on his stilts and a tiny headset as he searches for the yard. He sets off the sprinklers by accident, resulting in a genuine hurricane for the youngsters. As Wayne continues his craziness, the youngsters flee the air balloon-sized drops. This happens to be the exact moment the Borsteins come to complete their business. The four youngsters eventually get together, but Amy is hit by a droplet and thrown into a mud hole. Russ dashes down there, lickety-split, in an attempt to save her. As the Borsteins watch in fear, Mr. Zielinski eventually shuts off the sprinklers. Amy is rescued by Russ, who gives her mouth-to-mouth. We know what he was up to. She wakes up after a few rounds, which is fortunate for everyone. When the Thompsons' weekend companions, the Forresters, arrive in their camper, they're on the phone searching for their children. Mr. Thompson informs Mr. Forrester that they will be unable to attend, but lies about the cause, claiming that his wife is ill, not bothering to mention the disappearance of their darling kids. Amy expresses her gratitude to Russ for everything he has done for her and Nick. She also approaches Ron and makes peace with him, rubbing some dirt on his hands for good luck. Things are looking up now that they're about halfway through the yard. Mr. Zielinski, as it happens, is now peering down at them via his magnifying glass. The children are enthralled by the sight of a massive cream-filled cookie. They devour it heartily, before being stopped by a massive ant who demands a slice of the cookie. Not gonna argue with it, I guess. Nick comes up with a fantastic plan. He wants to ride the back of the ant to his house. Despite Amy's warnings, the lads enthusiastically get upon the insect as if it were a bucking bronco. Amy finally comes up with a plan to coax the ant into submission with a piece of cookie. She's a clever young lady. We return to Wayne, who's hung by an ingenious weighted device as he continues his quest. Cork, on the other hand, grabs the rope and spins Dad around like an airplane rotor. Meanwhile, the Thompsons have dialed 911. At the very least, someone has a brain in this movie. Ron is riding the ant in the grass, holding a cookie on a stick to keep it moving ahead. The rest of the children are seated on a leaf with its backside connected. When Diane returns home, she notices the Thompsons' house is surrounded by police cruisers. She makes the decision to contact the cops as well. The Thompsons are speaking with police officials who are convinced that the youngsters ran away, especially after their encounter with Big Russ. When Diane informs her husband that she's contacted the cops, he finally confesses the entire scenario. She's ecstatic at first that his idea succeeded until she realizes that our children are smaller than a centimeter in size. Meanwhile, the youngsters take a break to feed the ant. The ant and Ron appear to have formed a strong relationship, so Ron persuades the group to release it so it can return to his family. Auntie, the ant's name in case you didn't notice, continues to follow them as they walk away. Both Zielinski parents are now floating over the grass, searching for their children. The craziness is escalating. As they do so, Big Russ goes outside for a cigarette and stares at them, perplexed. It's like a meteor strike when he drops his cigarette on the ground near the youngsters. The youngsters examine it, and Ron has an idea. Because it's getting dark outside, he inserts a branch in the still smoldering butt and uses it as a torch. Diane, fed up with their unsuccessful quest, thinks it's time to tell the Thompsons the truth. Until Mr. Zielinski shows them the shrunken couch, the Thompsons are skeptical. Meanwhile, the kids have discovered one of Nick's Legos and are sleeping within its crevices. Russ makes some subtle passes on Amy, and even though she declines, she smiles at him with a very suggestive expression. Wayne is breaking apart his handmade gadgets within the house in order to make something. He goes outside to see how his wife is doing, who's waiting on the porch looking really anxious. Wayne discusses his inadequacies as an inventor. Diane, on the other hand, is concerned about their family as a whole. They need to reestablish themselves as a unit. Meanwhile, the children are discussing their parents. Russ is expressing his dissatisfaction with his father's pressure on him. Amy shifts the conversation to Russ and inquires as to why he's never come over before. He claims she's too popular. She also agrees. Humble young lady. They exchange kisses. Finally. Then, a horrifying intruder emerges out of nowhere. A scorpion. Everyone flees except Ron, who is trapped within the Lego block as the scorpion attacks. Russ throws the improvised torch at the scorpion, allowing Ron to flee, but the scorpion continues to attack. Auntie, fortunately, comes and begins a battle with the much larger monster. Our heroes, on the other hand, aren't giving up their steed and are pelting the scorpion with anything they can get their hands on. Auntie, unfortunately, has been severely injured. They are successful in chasing the scorpion away. Woohoo! Their joy is cut short, however, when they learn that Auntie has been fatally wounded. Wayne is hard at work fixing his shrink ray as the sun rises. Inside the Lego brick, the youngsters are crowded together, with what appears to be a makeshift tomb for Auntie outside. It's time for a brief potty break. Nature's calling. When we returned inside, Wayne was fast asleep next to his machine. He's been putting in a lot of effort. Remember the boy Nick persuaded to mow his lawn at the start of the film? Well, he's just come to do so. For obvious reasons, this is disastrous for our heroes. As the children rise from their beds, they hear a rumble and a loud buzzing. It's the lawnmower. Oh no. As Tommy commits an unintentional near massacre, the kids flee in terror. They take refuge in a handy hole belonging to an earthworm. While working on the shrink ray, the Zielinski parents hear the lawnmower and run outdoors. Tommy slams the brakes on the lawnmower as it approaches the hole where our heroes are hiding. They're on the verge of being pulled into the machine, but they manage to cling on. They're eventually propelled back up to the surface. Everyone appears to be getting exhausted, but no one has been hacked to bits. Even better, they were thrown directly next to the house, inches from their parents' faces. However, they are still unable to hear the children's screams. Then there's Quark. The children grasp the dog's hair and implore him to go get Dad. Quark even runs into his cat opponent at the entryway, but summons the guts to walk right past him. Quark leaps onto the table and releases the kids. Regrettably, he lets Nick go smack in the midst of Wayne's Cheerios bowl. The kids are anxiously trying to get Wayne's attention as he scoops, scoop after scoop. Quark bites Wayne on the leg at the last possible minute, preventing him from devouring his own son like the god Saturn. There's still that one issue. The shrink ray is still broken. The kids signal to the parents that it was the baseball that made the machine operate while they were trying to figure it out. Wayne understands. The ball had deflected the laser. Big Russ, on the other hand, refuses to use it on the kids until it has been tested. Wayne volunteers first, but Big Russ then surprises all of us by offering himself. It thankfully works. Finally, the youngsters take the initiative. Ron invites Amy to an upcoming school dance while they wait for their parents to fire the laser. She agrees. Even better, the machine works flawlessly, returning everyone to their original size. The children and their parents exchange a loving embrace. Both Thompson children assure their father that they would do anything he wants, but the old guy has visibly changed and now wants them to believe in themselves. He even shakes Wayne's hand. We cut to both families as they prepare to have turkey dinner while focused on this handshake. The turkey is enormous, thanks to Wayne's miraculous machine, of course. Under the table, Amy and Russ are also playing footsies. The film ends with Quark eating a massive milk bone.